Good afternoon. This is Kaspar, I'm Elena, and we're going to present you the project PAN-ODORATA.
There are many stories about Palermo, but today we would like to introduce you to a very specific one. It's the story of Marcantonio and the figurehead of the Argo. It is a play based on the constitution of PAN-ODORATA, which we'll tell you all about in a minute. But first, we will tell you a short story about how the worlds of Marcantonio and the figurehead collide and their offerings of friendship, a sort of prelude. Why beauty is dear to us. In 1582, Viceroy Marcantonio Colonna created a walking path on this part of the coast that became a favorite destination for the leisure of the upper classes of the city in the 17th and 18th century. Today, one calls it the Foro Italico. Briefly after its conclusion, he began, in a moment of frenzy, to draw children's drawings, texts of the mad. I am an only son, very rich and tenderly beloved by my mother. Have been carefully brought up, and education was not lost upon me. You know, I have lost track of the world. He writes, Venus, Verna, Volucres, Volnera, Amoris, these are the lines I want. A reciprocal effect takes place here. I asked him, what do you call this? A space to turn around in. He told me, this is home, this is Palermo. And in a brief moment of politeness, Marcantonio took the earth of this former creation, and with it, he greeted the old neighbor Naples. A migration by around 90 degrees, he thinks to himself, the whole city becomes a palace. At the end of a long procession, the steps leading to the altar were encrusted with precious marbles. Metaphors move around, metamorphose. The parasite is mimetic, yes, but the host starts to imitate the guest. Consequently, there is no longer a model or a copy. No text says that this procession stops, that this launched step comes to rest somewhere, whence the figures of wing and flight, which never in volatile fluid find definite supports. From Palermo to Naples and back home. Long avenues proceed from it all through the park, entering the palace, and then all around the globe. By the touch of a finger, shifted the globe's axis into line with the axis of the universe.
From a ship afar enters the figurehead on stage. The elements disordered crash into one another. She rammed the very constellations that Marcantonio was trying to hold together. Each center of aggregation barely formed breaks apart and falls. Luckily, she knows to interweave sound, smell, taste, moral, fetish, touch. As time passes, the two begin to converse about the disordered, contemplate about aggregations, and ponder into the entropic. Sometimes, however, they conflicted. Their disagreement about these facts is what renders conjecture rhetorical, and the revolution has already taken place at home. Their home. Abandoning the ideal, a certain beauty becomes incarnated. There was no agreement about the answers. None was needed, and their conversation becomes just so ardent. But he clearly sees that the agreement of others gives no valid proof of the judgment about beauty. That's what I wanted to say to you.
A place to talk about the aesthetics of conflict, a place to be subjective, she proposes. Their positions drift into the plenty. She tells him of the late Benedetto Croce, and he tells her about Venus in furs. Names don't constitute knowledge, or so we shall argue. Even the splash of a raindrop is symmetry breaking in action. Let's begin with raindrops. It is only relevant how captivating the story is, because all good questions have more than one answer. Is that not just so ardent? There is belonging tied to the notion of beauty, some sense of relevance, much more than something which is objectively true. Is it the world's most sought-after contract that can never be fulfilled? We ourselves cannot fulfill it, they say. Does it need time, opinion, guests, perhaps? The figurehead looks out of the window. To invite the gods ruins our relationship with them, but sets history in motion. This whole discussion, it is eternal but becoming, and where to do it? Between Dioreto and the city? To look at Den Haag, the Viking cruise, Etna and Orlando? It can be a house, or a part of a house, any number of things, anything. The figurehead thinks of a glossary.
But there was no agreement about the answers.
This partitioned whole, he took and stretched it and cut it into two and crossed and bent it such that the ends meet with ends. Governed by poems, images gather. And born out of the disarray, a house. To find comfort in the implicit and be torn apart by the explicit, to contract a reenactment of the goddess without verse. The odd couple, but did not admire the construction of it so much. They wanted to make it sensory. Leave the crystalline and don't think about legislature, he says. Crystalline structures offer one example of this at a level of complexity much lower than that of all known living organisms, because they strive to be absolute. As cityness is a morph and not crystalline, enactment is the way to go. Figurehead agrees with a nod. Beauty is located at the intersections of these clarities. So we need poems, music, sculptures, and dance that replace the supposed ethics of the legislature. The event subsequently gave rise to a rite. The genres, the modes, the scale, all received new faces, body to body. The first version will simulate the electrical activity, and a future version will also simulate the relevant chemical activity. The real, when the rational can't go there, may the right go there.
A masterpiece from which nothing can be taken away without injury to the whole. This order didn't come up by chance. It is always the same and alike, reweaving the like fabric in the like manner. That's what you call natural talent. It will always be for him a vulnerable place. There is a bit of beauty in simply wanting beauty. In a single blow, she eliminates hearing and noise, vision and failed drawing, and in a single blow, we conceive the form and we understand each other. We require to understand how the unity of the universe requires its multiplicity. We require to understand how infinitude requires the finite. what Zarathustra calls the communion. And this communion opens Palermo's new mouth. Skin on skin becomes conscious, the city breathes, their home inflates. This membrane, which makes the outside and the inside present to each other, is called memory. Here, scents are the most radical poems, or Dichtungen. They trigger the memory and bind like ideals to flesh. They incarnate intuition. There is no longer a form, but only relations of velocity between infinite small particles on an unformed material. And finally, Marcantonio, the figurehead, could see their creation, and they took a nap to rest. The rest followed from it, an extended invitation, a Sunday of rest.
From here on, the play will take some turns and twists. After waking up from their nap, to their surprise, the birds have just left some moments ago and left behind a lot of bird shit. The two miss the climax of their own story, but for the sake of today, we will let them sleep. Today, we will introduce to you how Marcantonio's children's drawings would have been enacted underneath the Parliament's gardens, how you touch them, see them, and smell them.
Symposium, how to talk to the entropic. Theme, conversations, setting, a side table with semi-warm coffee and ashes of smoked cigarettes, plastic chairs surrounding the table, arranged in a manner that brings 2 or 3 conversational companions in close proximity. Ritual, enigmatic scores are handed out. Their enacted interpretation creates small Dada poems. Type of contract, implied. Time, 7:21. There must always be a conversation before the speaking begins.
And what I see is entirely different from what the others see.
The perspective becomes more uniform. The supplement adds itself. It's a surplus, a plentitude enriching another plentitude. The fullest measure of presence.
For who will process this vast mass of signs?
Tomorrow we'll have to deal with the topic of power.
Who in the flock can declare themselves subject to this?
These strangers become, for better or for worse, truly mythological. What? What?
Nothing. I was half asleep and talking to myself.
Now I have to eat my words. I could find no way out of my uncertainty by listening to them. While the cardboard cups leaves a scent on the hand, their chairs rest on the soft ground that is laid out with Persian carpets.
Now I'm talking.
What can stop us telling the truth with a laugh?
Now there is inordinate laughter and inordinate joy in excessive play.
And Zarathustra says nothing this time, and their conversation is enough to put the convalescent Zarathustra to sleep.
And when we now open the theater play, we find a small chorus of the city because the city always has an opinion. What answer do we have? The answer must be in the city.
silo, where your feet are never dry. Theme, comfort, setting, salty waters and dense liquids. Type of contract, unspoken. Ritual, take off your footwear and plunge into the water. Out of the struggle with the liquid, new choreographies emerge that constitute the new plans of living. Time, 9:41. As the sun rises gently, one begins to see its double. So open your eyes newly. It was a reflection, softer than the solid. This is the liquid. Naked, without any other apparatus in the bath, on the ground and through the air, this body sinks but surfaces, rolls but floats, prey to the vertigo of drowning, but saved from the waters by what the vertical force. It stands and steps out of the bath, walks, runs, leaving the tracks and its wet feet on the sand. Finally, leaping with joy, takes flight by following in the wind, between by a seraphic verb, Eureka. She has no feet. How can one move about in space when one's feet is afflicted? I rise to my feet. My home is where I put my feet. And behind me, the meridian, the faces, for movement does not take its species from the term where from, but from the term where to. Memories from the past are triggered, whilst memories of the future are being created. Time is endless as long as there is time. A reciprocal effect takes place there. Endemic with lifted feet. Thus, reason never discovers beneath his feet anything but his own rule. He knows how to behave. He's at home. No need to pronounce the contract. And Zeus, unhappy with our insolence, cut us in two. As soon as the punishments of Zeus took place, the sad sea bird halves run into one another to intertwine, to unite, and to find their plenitude once more.
What answer do we have? The answer must be in the city.
Are you hungry?
Saffron breads, tahini, but you're not invited. Tamarind pulp, anchovy filet, truffle oil, sumac, nobody is. Garam masala, yuzu, it's an exhibition. Harissa paste, miso paste.
I'm one of one. I'm number one. I'm the only one. Don't even waste your time trying to compete with me. No one else in this world can think like me. I'm twisted, self-contradicted. Keep him addicted. Lies on his lips, I lick it. Unique. That's what you.
This is the orchestra of noise. How do you sell your desires in a noisy place? Theme desires, setting, inside, only smooth surfaces, absence of scratches, no absorption, vibration, noise. Type of contracts, explicit. Ritual, naked, one will shout at the room's walls until they break of frequency to shape sculptures of desire. Time, 1542. Inside the parliament is a tiny door with tiny measurements, like a valve that keeps the noise shut, also called the one who is singing. And behind the door, loud desire. The smooth surface erases the angles of its predecessor, the step pyramid. The liquid surface was offered as a cure for modern eyes, tired of looking at congested, opaque walls. The noisy echo of 1,000 voices, white light with 10 colors. In the orchestra of noise, we need to strain our ears and bend down towards this murmuring of the world and try to perceive so many images that have never been poetry, so many fantasies but have never attained the colors of day. They were now to show what they could perform. Me, I offer 10. I offer my purpose. What causes for excitement? Here. I offer 5 for my love. You want to know love? 4 billion, 75 billion, it's not enough. I want to be wise. What goes in goes out. We impregnate the city. This is an auction. These are the lines I want. The stones radiated desire. Beneath them a puddle of sweat, a pool of all the decisions, perspiration. And here you see contracting contracts is the opposite of increasing fun. Our most intimate gestures move to sounds. We dance. So the voices start to dance, all at a different pace. And with it, the noise is born in the plaza. The noise grows. It rises, fills the forum, slips into everywhere, occupies the city. So the love of God no longer wins us. The love of man ceases to chain. The deeds of passion revives within us. The wild desires revive again.
What answers do we have? The answer must be in the city.
Your Honor, how can the jury accurately estimate the testimony being given here unless they first know the reason behind this whole trial?
Welcome to the Garden of Apparent Absolutes. What do we ask when the cityness drowns in noise? Theme, opinions. Setting, next to the oak tree lies the lemon tree, the olive tree, the eucalyptus, the loquat, the myrtle, and the agave. Type of contract, we think you can't do contracts all the time. Ritual, go to court while sleeping on the oak's roots. Time 1703. In the middle of the garden was a fountain, surrounded by gold and silver statues of young men and women. And next to it, this tree, a tree of knowledge, perhaps, had its roots when it grew straight and upright to soar above the city. The sturdy oak presents itself. I don't need light to grow. It's the uncertainties that make me grow. Rise up, judge of the earth. That's what the birds told me, so I rise. I make no claim to know what truth is, nor to have attained truth. Here, the question of truth, that is of tribunal and judgment, will reveal its full ambiguity. Oh, but your ethics seduce me, and how I savor their bouquet. I love the embodiment of a mysterious truth, as a fetish. The birds ask what ethics should govern the ethics of nations and of individuals. He sees no solution and no doubt, no sense to such a question. Here, the truths I can rely on while forming a contract. The tree murmurs as there is a noticeable shiver going through his branches up to the leaves, which ends in a fondness in his eyes. If you ask the tree of truth, does it become true? Only such a court decides. The brain becomes our problem or our illness, our passion rather than our mastery, our solution or decision. And morality is a blossoming out of truths, and no simple matter for intuition. This conclusion remained unexplained. This is where people go to transcend, to ask for revelation and to be freed from their burden of decisions. The bird called the oak many names, a tree with a fetish, a tree for apparent truths, and a tree in general. I simply take pleasure in the obviousness of understanding truth. And so the truth is, it is the myths that are still out there waiting to wake us and be seen by us, like a tree waiting to greet our newly opened eyes.
What answer do we have? The answer must be in the city.
This is the apparatus, an olfactorium, where smells are fermented and intuition absorbs memory. Theme, memory, setting, a whale's stomach, hyper-technical, machine room, and maybe a bed to sleep. Types of contracts, aleatory and void. Ritual, lay out everything that you've brought along that can be turned into vapor and fermented together. An ardent odor will emerge and bind to your flesh to be carried out. Time 21:43. Beneath the Parliament's eyes are its olfactory nerves. Here it is where the heart pumps and its lungs breathe, and it is very like a whale's stomach. Inside the nose monologue, an aroma of antiquity, here one finds the most ardent odors and heavenly scents. When looking up the whale, the stomach stretches to the sky, where the sun warms its belly. It seems as if the walls themselves want to compete with the Olymp. The world is now a chemical machine. And in the first moments of sleep, the vapors that rise up from the body to the head are multiple, turbulent, and dense. And from that, heaven, sea, earth, and thunder are the interior of a boiler which bakes the material of the world. The fermentation process takes place. The machine closed her eyes and let out a long exhalation of breath. Ambroxide, red roses, and red coral that make them up with the brain of sparrows and the blood of pigeons. And the walls start to sing in tune with the ardent odor, a scent so lovely that all olfactory memories reset. Here intuition absorbs all memory. Blow them up and warm them gently to vaporize the perfume so that intuitivity leads to entropy. The reality of the city is never just factual, nor is it ever just fictitious. In a city, nobody can know what the next steps are in relation to what is happening. Awake again, with your eyes closed, the day almost smells like home. It smells like nothing but itself, pungent and sublime. And all of the birds can become God's vehicle to spread the aroma of the knowledge of him everywhere. To smell God, therefore, was to smell of God. This brings the soul a sweet and moderate pleasure, agreeable odors, a walk through delicious places, the sight of people who in the past have brought pleasure and music.
Palermo heard her breath exhale in a soft snore, and as always, that embarrassed her.
Life is a mystery. Everyone must stand alone. I hear you call my name, and it feels like home. I was